So Arjun, I'll start taking this up as, Upgrad is one of the leading edtech companies in India and has grown immensely, in past 5 years. So why don't you take us through, kind of highlights in the journey in past 5 years as to how you started and reached here?
Yeah. So you are, I mean, should I say about my journey or Upgrad's journey? Because the both the things kind of intersected on 1st of April this year. I am also new to Upgrad, but yeah, let me just split the question into two parts. Let me first talk about Upgrad because I'm assuming that the viewers will be more interested in knowing that a young company. So this company was founded by Mayank, Falgun, and Ravi. Of course, Ronnie was the chief idea inceptor and the investor and the person who got it all together. These four co-founders started the company. The idea was to work out or focus on higher education of India. They felt that K-12 has a lot of players in edtech, but nobody is really bothered about higher ed. And the problems in higher ed are as deep as the primary or the K-12 education in India. So if you look at our GER, the gross enrollment ratio, I mean, which is in press now, thanks to the new education policy, we do really bad in it. While advanced country like US or European nations or even the large Asian giants like China do extremely well. They are in the ratio of 70 to 80%, while we are still in close 20s or low 10s in a lot of states. So their idea was that, or their insight was that this GER is low because of two reasons. One is the access. Most of India doesn't have access to these colleges. They don't have one in the locality. There are very few good colleges which people aspire to go, and most people don't get there. Second is affordability. It's just not about finding a college. Maybe it's a government college and the fees is less, but there are a lot of other things, right? You have to move to a new city. There is a lot of cost involved in it. You have to create, I mean, an ecosystem there. You have to live there. The living expenditure. It's most of the people in smaller towns in India don't find it affordable. They think that it's better to go figure out a small job and just make a living there. So this was in fact really pulling our nation itself back. So their idea was that we can only revolutionize this if we create a higher ed platform which will solve this problem of infrastructure. It's actually it's actually an education infrastructure issue more than anything else, right? So solve this infrastructure issue by bringing the best teachers, by bringing the best curriculum, the updated curriculum what the industry wants to the students. And that's where the whole idea of online as a channel came into picture. So this is where it got conceptualized. The company has been dealing majorly with postgraduate products, the latest what industry needs, which is in data products, data science, machine learning. We recently got, I would say, a year back, we seriously got into management education with a lot of MBA products. And now from this quarter onwards, with the online learning becoming a new license which the government is coming out with, we are getting into undergrad products also. So where Upgrad stands today is we want to be everything for a student post K-12. We have a lot of schools there is deep penetration of good schools, medium schools, different levels, because thanks to the private players in most of the towns and cities of India. While higher ed is still a problem. And this is what we will try to solve by taking the entire thing online and bringing the best universities to you. That is where the same point you said, right? We have courses from IIT Madras, we have courses from IIIT Bangalore, MICA, international universities like Deakin and Liverpool, Moore, all these things. So this is what Upgrad tries to do. Now, to add few more things about me, I joined Upgrad in April. I joined remotely. I mean, I have never been to office. So in some essence, you can say that whatever we have been preaching, we are living it now. Literally, every aspect of our company is online now. Be it onboarding, be it delivery of our product, be it sales, be it marketing, everything is online. Like every single thing. We are even producing content online now. The teachers are using their laptops and phones to record their videos. that's remotely getting sent to our editors, and our producers and directors online produce content, and we are updating that in our system. So that's where we are going to. This is the new way of life. So I joined from Byju's. So I have been in edtech ever since edtech as a term originated in India. Been with Byju since the earlier days when we were a coaching center. Then initially was involved in product, then marketing, then sales. Then we had an acquisition in the US where last year, most of my time I was in US taking care of that acquisition and growing the international business. So you can say that I've been one person who have worked in edtech starting from test prep to K-12 to K-10 to K-3 to early learning and now professional education. So that's briefly about me and about Upgrad.
Fabulous, fabulous. And I think the timing itself is very, very interesting, Arjun. I think whatever we were thinking about would, get into a maximum speed, and a lot of these things which were restricted by conventional education, because like if you say foreign universities never wanted to bring these programs to India because they felt that students would stop coming to their universities, and there's a huge amount of revenues which these countries do. Well, I mean, I feel that they would still go. That's not going to happen but I feel that this is the opening up of a new way of learning. And post K-12, you're absolutely right. I think the opportunity was much wider, and a lot of dropouts were there because people were not able to pursue their learnings. And now with this ability available, both economically and also by convenience, I think this would open up a huge opportunity. And I think congratulations to you to be part of this whole life cycle. So you have been an early adopter of early member of edutech community, and then now being part of this company. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
So, one thing, I've always been interested in asking, so I thought I'll ask you today, Arjun, that, Simon Sinek, I kind of hear him a lot nowadays from past 3-4 months. And he says that, company culture is a concept that is easier to experience, than to describe. So wanted to understand from you as to, how is it represented well in Upgrad, and what really you stand for? And then in second part, would want to understand that how is it that you look forward to, kind of inculcate and maintain it down the line, since you have channel partners and being into education quality is, of an utmost importance. So how do you do that?
So I just want to add to what you said, the whole company culture about experiencing, right? By extension, and this is something which Ronnie keeps telling, right? He says that company is what its top management is all about. It finally starts showcasing the characteristics of the people who is building it and making decisions, right? So he says that, so you improving as a person is extremely important if you want the company to improve and grow. So what is that you acquired new today? And I am a firm believer in that, because I think it's finally about how do you experience culture basis the decisions we make, right? And what is the basis of these decisions? It's our belief system. It's our moral code. So as a person, I am a big believer of fairness. And I'm a big believer of persistence and hard work. And that's what I try to do in every organization I have worked for. And Upgrad is no exception. So at times it involves, and not at times, a lot of times it involves setting those rules and being strict about it. But one thing which I am always particular is that everything you do should be fair. Anybody, internal or external, who is getting associated with the organization will only be excited and will have a long-standing relationship with the organization if they know that there is fairness in it. If they know that if I work hard, I will be rewarded and I will grow. And the organization will ensure that people who are not following this mechanism will not go ahead of me. In my experience, what I've seen is that this gives them a lot of confidence and a lot of focus on what they need to do rather than being worried about anything else. So that's the culture we have been trying to build. And that is the culture we have been persistent on. To be honest, it's not an easy thing to work, especially when there is so much of uncertainty and so much of changes in all our life. Okay, and like work, I'm sure that 90% of us is experiencing working from home for the first time in their life. They've never really worked from home. So my dad, he's an auditor. I mean, he's been running his audit firm for so many years. His entire work schedule is that I'll work very hard from office, but evening 8 o'clock once I'm home, I will not even discuss work inside home. All those are gone now. I'm seeing him take Zoom calls from the laptop. So the aspect is that we are finally working with a lot of people who are not used to it, and hence to inculcate this whole idea of work very hard, be efficient, be focused all the time when you're working has been very, very tough. But I think last 4 months we have been over communicating. We have been talking continuously, ensuring that everyone hears us and hears the logic in it and makes them understand that this is not a temporary lull. Maybe this is the way we are going to live. So you better learn this. So that's been interesting, and this is the culture we want to show as an organization, and that's what we have been working on. I would say we are 80% there, 20% we will get there in probably next couple of months.
Excellent. And how do you see the reaction today from the market viewpoint? I mean, is the adaptability moving as fast as you think that people are shifting? And broader question, I mean, and this should come from you. Do you really see that the conventional education, the kind of infrastructure which is deployed in the education space, especially on the higher education, what is going to happen to that? How are they going to be able to realistically justify that? Because I feel that, and this we have seen in most of the industries, when you deploy too much of capital in one part of the conventional way of doing it, and it starts disrupting, everybody wants to hold it on. How soon this and how real is this disruption?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one is, as you rightly pointed out, Gaurav, I mean, there have been a lot of noise. I mean, I'm sure that you have seen it and you have been following it. Since the end of March, it has been, EdTech has arrived. This is the next thing. Every investor is investing, huge growth. But you would have observed that nobody has been talking much about the Q1 revenue after Q1 closed, right? There's been a lot of noise in April and early May. So what I'm seeing is that the traffic has gone up disproportionately. There suddenly is a large number of people who wants to look at online education, who is figuring out, okay, what is this? I have never done it in my life, but is it really effective? So a large number of fence sitters have started sampling it. So in Q1, I would have seen around 5x, 6x growth in traffic. And this was the case across, right? More so in K-12 because kids are all sitting at home. What will they do? So the traffic was high. But I did not see, and this is across EdTech, I did not see a conversion into revenue at the same lines. Because one is, finally, education is just not chocolates. It's chocolates and your broccoli also. So you cannot expect that with entertainment, you will be able to sell it, or automatically Indians will come and buy these high ticket size products. So you need a infrastructure to do that conversion, which is basically your sales and marketing engine. So whoever had it has been able to convert that 5x, 6x growth in traffic into probably 1.5, 2x times revenue, which is particularly basically our case also. But whoever has not had it, whoever believed that, okay, Indians also will automatically come and buy education like Westerners do with a Coursera or with a Udemy, did not see that happening, because Indian mentality is very, very different. So the point I'm trying to stress here is that, yes, there is a huge uptick in people who are now looking at this as an option, but the uncertainty has not really converted a lot of them into paying customers. They are either sampling a free product or taking a subscription, which will be probably a month or two. So my hypothesis is that you have to be continuously on it. You have to talk to them. You have to send them the update. You have to tell them that what is this going to be. You have to offer them features which they think is important. The eventual conversion happened. So I was looking at the last month's conversion. I saw that almost 20% of the customers who converted were customers who came to our platform in March. So it actually took almost 4 months for the conversion to happen. But slowly it's happening. So in my mind, online education definitely has arrived. It is no question a penny drop moment, but don't expect the tide to turn in a month or two. It has to happen over a period of time. The growth definitely has improved, but it's a regular process. Now coming to the second question, and this is where the entire thing is, right? Whenever you invest so much of money, disruption is something you are scared of. And nothing against the offline. It is, I think there are certain aspects of offline which cannot be mimicked in online. So where I'm seeing the world going is that I would expect it to become a hybrid system. I would expect learn while you earn to become a very, very viable proposition going forward. See what I see, if I'm just being a little philosophical here and digressing a bit, if you look at the whole idea of education in India, right, it is about life transformation. In India, we don't follow a Western philosophy of knowing for knowledge, right? It is about, okay, I will get a job, my life will change, I will be successful. That is what people think about. So online education, the problem so far has been the whole acceptability at an employer level. Now I'm seeing there a huge change happening, especially with people like us doing a direct integration with industry. So my guess is that as and when that changes, the learn while you earn will take off in a big manner. Still, they would want to go to universities, use those infrastructure. It may evolve into a hybrid model. But suddenly people have started realizing that this is really worth it. I don't really need to take a break for a few years to go and do it. So this is where I'm seeing. But of course, there will be a lot of agents against this change. We will see where it goes.
Yeah, and very well thought. And I think another area which I think there would be conversions of, there was a very clearly, so to say, one was a credible content and which was coming from these, so to say, universities and colleges and professors and lot of these people who were generating a lot of good content. And then there were platforms which were really more sales engine or acquisition engine. There would be a bit of conversions also, I see, which would happen now, because and there also might be other way around, in terms of a lot of these content creators also might like to aggregate themselves and try to see some value creation. And because I think so, any views you have on that? I mean, how does this conversions would happen?
So what's happening today is that platforms, in India at least, or what I have seen is that the biggest of and the most successful companies in India, even on the online space, has not just been platforms. Along with platforms, they also owned content. Content owning has been a very, very important aspect of the success of these products here. And that's also because the valuation game where content gets a lot of value more than just being a distributor. It's a high margin game. So where I'm seeing evolution now happening is, a platform will grow only if they own the content. They may open it up to influencers, like the way a TikTok became so popular with so much of influence, or a YouTube or Instagram became. I will expect some of the superstar, rock star educationists today becoming actual content creators. But it's need to be seen whether they will own that content or the content will be owned by these aggregators. Because for them, right, their valuations are very closely related to the fact that they own this content. So this is where I like to call it as the Unacademy phenomenon. Okay, Unacademy is successful today because they own most of the content. It's no longer an open platform, right? So I would see things moving in that direction. It's very important that the content is with the platform.
Absolutely, and I think that's very, very well said. And I think people who would, this winner would be who would own the content, and IP would be built and value would be built on the content side.
Yeah.
Over to you, Ashita, for your question.
Yeah. So, so just taking this thing further, so it means that, you would also have to make clear-cut choices, as to uh, how to compete, with whom to compete, or whom to service, what kind of courses should be there to, because obviously the professional courses would be, as per the category. So how have you made those choices so far? And is there anything that you look forward to do more in that space?
Yeah. So I personally, what I do is I just listen to one set of people, which is the customer. Okay, my entire strategy is around this one individual called my target customer, who today is a working professional, early years, few years of experience, looking at again, I told you, right, a life transformational change. It could be a career acceleration, career progression, or doing better in his job, things like that. So I always try to listen to what that guy wants, right? So the way we operate is that good part about Upgrad is that we have a large sales team who talks to them literally and converts them. So the way I see is I try to summarize the conversation this customer is doing. And these are always in-depth conversation because the customer talks to the counselor, right? Always it's about what my aspirations are, what my fears are, how will you help me, how will I be? So it gives you a lot of insight. So the decisions on the courses we are going to launch, the decisions on the segments we are going to uh, compete in or target has always been about what this customer wants. Even the platforms we will be present in has been largely defined by this customer. I mean, the whole idea of should I do a hybrid course is also going to be defined by this customer. If the customer wants to do that, we'll figure it out. So that's how I like to see it, because otherwise you'll get confused. If you start chasing a competitor saying that, okay, this guy seems to be doing well, now let me go and do things which he's trying to do, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I would like to completely focus on my customer and see what he wants or she wants and then deliver to them. So this is how it's very simple.
Sure, sure. Interesting. So how, so understandably, you've got about, 150 channel partners. So how this, whole thing, which happened just, since March till
Yeah.
now, so
Yeah.
things have changed, how it has really impacted in terms of expectations of a consumer from Upgrad, and
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
transfer that to your partners?
Correct. So I'll just explain to you also. I mean, before we started, we were chatting about it, that it is a very recent thing that we have started tying up with channel partners and franchises. I'll also tell you the reason for that, right? The reason is again the consumer. So what I observed is that when the pandemic struck, or maybe last year itself, late last year, I saw a large surge in the number of customers coming to us from smaller cities. The smaller city could be a Trichy, could be a I won't say Indore, could be a Sagar, could be a Rohtak. All these upcoming, I call it as the emerging India, right? And there has been a large surge of customers coming from that. And I have worked with these customers when I was in Byju's also, right? My bet in education always has been that in a metro, the kids have got a lot of options, but online is a flattening idea for that kid in a tier 3 city or a tier 2 city. So my focus always has been there. And I saw this happening in working professionals in upskilling also, especially after COVID started. So when we delve deeper, what we realized is that a lot of these people were in SMEs, entrepreneurs, who suddenly now understands that they need to upskill themselves. Then only will they be able to survive in this online world. I mean, there are companies which runs retail stores in smaller towns. The business runs into crores, but they still don't know how to do a e-commerce portal. They are all thinking about how to go to the next step. Now, when, and I told you, right, there's a surge, but the conversion has been bad. So when we delve deeper, when we spoke to this customer, we understand that there is a huge trust deficit, right? And the trust deficit will disappear, especially when there is touch and feel. When someone you know or someone you regard as your own is talking to you about this product and convincing you. So the answer to that obviously was one, I expand and create what I did in Byju's, like 100 offices, have sales guys in every town possible, locals they recruited from there, trained by us. He will go to the homes of the customer and close the sale. Or second option is there is a large potential channel partners and franchisee networks created by colleges over a period of many years. And now with the pandemic coming, those guys don't have any way to do business now because most colleges don't even know when they will open. Or if there's an admission also, will that be online admission or offline admission? So I thought that why would I really go and hire? Rather work with these people who have got the experience and who can bring in that local connect. So this is where the whole idea or thought process of channel partners came in. Again, completely focused on the customer. So in last 3 months, we spoke to a lot of these channel partners. We explained to them what our product is, the delivery is. I am surprised at the speed at which they came on board. They were all ready to get the trainings done in a system like this, Zoom systems. We gave them our CRM's access. We created new CRM products with them. We created rules and incentive structure wherein everything was clearly put in place. What will be the percentage when, if you are bringing the lead, if I am giving the lead, all those sort of things. In no time, we were live. Still, of course, it's an iterative process. They are all learning, talking, all these things are happening. But this has been the idea. Now, always one thing which I have taken or which I have always believed in is that I literally look at them as partners. I think that there is only long-term sustainability in this business if with us, they also make money. Right? So we are clearly focused on that. We want only people who are really serious about business coming to us because we will expect them to work very hard. But we will ensure that like the way we reward our sales team, they will also be rewarded. And I told you the whole idea of fairness, which I believe in. This is how we have been going out. The feedback has been quite good. And that's also when I thought I will start engaging with Franchise India because this is the platform which gives access to the largest number of partners in the country. And talking here will also let me ensure that our message goes out to them. And if there are interested parties, they can always talk to us. So this has been what it was. A very short journey. But yeah, I am very excited about the future of this journey.
Absolutely. And I think they also can be your, so to say, influencers in their own zones. And I think it's a perfect time to really go out because this whole franchise program, which is a low cost kind of a model which you have, I think has a much bigger opportunity. This whole micro entrepreneurship would rise the maximum in these times because a lot of people have been displaced and they're moved out of their past careers and so on and so forth. So a lot of people are looking at opportunity, and I genuinely feel it's a good service also. It's a good service because you are able to empower a lot of people who can, with you, can take their life in control and their opportunity in control.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm very excited about because finally, as an entrepreneur, as an organization, it's finally about the number of lives you touch, right? And number of people you make successful. Years down the line, if they come back and tell you that because of you, I was able to build a business, or because of your upgrade, I was able to make myself successful. That's great. So when I was with Tata Group in Titan, I have seen how as an organization, Titan reaped so much of benefit by having this partners who initially came in as, trade dealers. Then they realized that this company is going to go big. So they became distributors. Then they took a retail store. They became retailers. So that network, right? I used to run that network for quite some time. So that network in my mind is the strongest support system which Tata Group has, most of its companies. And then there's cross-selling between the companies. One guy who came in as a dealer initially has a Tanishq showroom also, Titan showroom also, a Titan I Plus also, Tata Motors showroom also. That's how the ecosystem grows. So all the big success stories in India today, I mean, the legendary ones, be it ITC or Tatas, are companies who have been patiently growing this network, which is what, as an organization, we also want to do in long term. It's a small start, but the dreams are big.
And absolutely. I remember one of the Tata distributors, once the lady was in Agra, I still remember there were multiple partners. They had Tanishq, they had Tata Motors, and she was building a mall. And she said, I will only use the steel which is from Tata. So that's a kind of fan following, right? So they
Yeah.
become followers for the business, and surprised to me that even from a consumerism, from a consumer decisions also, she was so fussy that everything to do with that group. So
Yeah.
it's the value of a greater partnerships. And
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's also because the group is very fair. Okay. Now a lot of things would have changed, but always the group has been fair. And you need that. If you support them in times of tough times, they will support you in your tough times. That is how it is.
Yeah, true. So how is it, so we understand that, it's largely centralized, when it comes to content disbursement to the consumers. So how is it standardized, and how do you measure it from a consumer standpoint? And what is so I understand, if a professional does one course, I'm just thinking from a, partner point of view, that if I have somebody who's doing one course, is it likable that he would do another course, or what is the duration in which he can come back, or how do you measure that?
Yeah. So that's so first of all, one of the things which we do a lot as an organization is that we ensure that the engagement on our learning of our learners is very, very high. So I think you also stated that statistics, right? We have around 85% conversion rate. And sorry, not conversion, completion rate. So when I say completion rate, 85% of the people who come in with us complete their course in the predefined time, because it's university run programs, right? There is a time that within this time you have to complete so many credits. So they complete it, they get the certificate, they get the degree, right? There will be some group of people who will say that I don't care, I just want to complete it off, don't worry about it, I will do it in a self-paced mode because I don't have time. If I include that also, it comes to more than 90%. Now that, compare that with the MOOC platform where the completion rate is 2%. So the same thing which I told you in the beginning, right? Education is just not about chocolate, it's about broccoli also. So you have to ensure that they understand this, and there is enough social infrastructure around it to make them complete it. So we invest a lot in mentor services. There is like almost one mentor responsible for each student who will follow up with the students if the engagement is going down, if he's not submitting the assignment in time, so on and so forth. So we ensure that the student gets the best out of the program by completing, and then probably placement services, so on and so forth. So engagement is a very, very important metric we chase, and we ensure that that happens. It is because of this that good number of our learners come back to us. So currently, if I look at it, we have approximately 12 to 15% of our learners who are coming back to us and taking multiple courses. Now, this you should see from the perspective that I have only postgraduate courses. I don't even have a structuring of it. It's only postgraduate. So there are multiple people who are taking multiple courses. With UG coming in, I'm hoping this number will really go up. Right? So finally, it is very important that we give value to that customer basis his expectation after when he spends so much of money and takes the course with us. And that's something which we very, very much stress on.
Okay, that's interesting. So everything happens centralized.
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, everything happens centralized. So just sorry, I missed that point. So what happens is that to ensure that the quality is at the level we want. See, one of the biggest advantage about online education is that you will get access to the best teachers who would have never come and taught in a school near yours, right? That's the biggest thing. So what we ensure is that we curate the content centrally with the best of the people who are experts in their industry. But at the same time, we weave out the learning journey so that these people come at the right things, right times in life. So this is completely centrally built, and this is one of the reasons how we are taking the next level quality to everybody available. So there are few things which are centralized, and there are few things which are completely decentralized. So for instance, I told you the sales part has to be decentralized. The marketing part marketing part will be centralized at a delivery level, but there will be some aspect of BTL which has to be decentralized. The content creation and online delivery is obviously centralized. So the way we are looking at is what is the best efficient way to do things.
And there is also a good question, which I think somebody's asked, Priyank has asked, very interesting questions. Online education, especially for a higher education, essentially revolves around your career, so which means that your employment and things of that nature. How soon that mindset for employers would change?
Yep.
Because that would be a big driver for this online education, because historically we call it a formal and non-formal education. Non-formal never got recognized
Yep.
purely predominantly because the organization or institutions, the world out there, which is never recognized them. So everybody wanted that if you don't hold a degree, then you're not certified. If you don't get and so then we get into the whole cycle of what is UGC approved, which is ASC. Now this has become a one body, but how this cycle would break?
Yep. Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier in one of the responses, finally, it's all about the job. So the recognition at an employer level is what is most important. So see, a lot of people ask me this question, that what is Upgrad's value addition? Finally, you are getting a IIIT Bangalore degree or an IIT Madras degree online. Are you the platform provider? I can also ask these people to come on YouTube and take the classes, right? What is the value add? A lot of people ask me. So this is, and this is how I have always seen it, right? What Upgrad does is it brings in that employability layer to the entire thing. What's the biggest issue today with our education system? Our education system, we all respectfully accept and keep saying that this is at least 10 years behind industry, right? We all say that. And this is the problem. Every big organization today has a large training program after a fresher is inducted. They don't expect that first year there is any value coming out of this, because they know that, okay, his education is outdated. So what we as Upgrad did is that all our courses are co-designed and co-built. We work with the academics and the industries. So if I take an example, if you look at our data science course, half of the syllabus is delivered by practitioners, the data scientists in companies, CEO of data science companies, who actually tell them what is happening in the industry. All the courses have got live projects. They have got thesis presentation on practical problems where they apply this. And most importantly, at the end of we also have a career services team, which ensures that we connect our students to multiple companies. So the CVs, the companies which collaborate with us, we share the CVs and we get interview opportunities for people whom they like to. Giving the placement is finally their prerogative, but we ensure that the person is skilled enough to be recruited by a company which is in that specialization, both from the perspective of hard skills and soft skills. And from the company's perspective, they are ready from day one. So we will be literally the only online education company in India today which has an alumni office. We have an alumni network. We have proof across the industry that people whom we trained can be the kind of employees these companies want. So slowly, we are working with each and every one of those employers to change that mindset. Thankfully, this government, the new rules of education is also helping us. They are now trying to say more and more that online education is same as that. The whole idea of bringing online degree, where the certificate is exactly the same as an offline institution, is a movement in that direction. So I am totally with you when that question comes in. Employer is a very, very important stakeholder. And like the way we work with learners and our partners to make the business successful, we have to work with them also. So this is how we are handling this.
Sure. Your questions, Ashita. You're on mute.
Sorry. So, this is interesting, that, the acceptability, and I think the practical aspect of actually using what you've learned is something that our government is also promoting nowadays. And I think it's well effective.
Yeah.
As an employer, I can tell you skill is over even the certification, once we hire the people. So yeah, I go by that. So, Arjun, taking this forward, understandably that you've been, in past in touch with the channel partners or franchisees for the existing companies. What are so-called, the best practices that you look forward to follow for your relationships here? And is there anything, that you have been working with for them that, takes the journey smoothly with them, that helps them also to grow and to get consumers on board?
Yeah. So two aspects which I've observed. So one thing is, what I want to do with them is maintain transparency. I want to, so what we have done so far is that we have basically our communication with them is clear. This is what you need to do, and this is what I will do it. Some channel partners will find it not very, will find it not good enough for them, but that we are fine. We want to play by the rules, and we want to play by the rules we agree to. So one part I believe is important is the transparency part. Second aspect is the whole online bit. So we are a technology company. We work a lot on technology products. So a lot of things we try to make efficient by using technology. We want our channel partners, our partners generally also to start thinking like this. They should not expect us to send a person there to meet them every now and then. They should not expect us to do an offline training. That is not going to happen. Even after the pandemic goes also, that is not something we will be able to do as a nimble-footed organization. So this is another thing which we are clear. One is the clarity of the rules. Second is the clarity of the processes. What can be expected from us, right? So, and of course, the firm believe that both the companies, both the partners, we and them should make money in it. So we will deal with all those things fairly. There will be also what we had tried to do is there is a lot of communication we try to do with these partners. We have invested on channel partner managers who are continuously in touch with these guys, giving them update, telling them what is happening, taking care of their resolution. Resolution is a very, very important aspect, especially with this such kind of complex channels coming in, right? You have your channel, you have partners, you have franchisees. So where does the sale go? There has to be clear-cut rules. There has to be grievances redressal mechanism. So all those things are what we have set up. So far, it's been all good, but then it's very early stage. I think all these things will become important when the business grows and the bloodbath starts, right? So you have to ensure that there is no bloodbath.
Yeah. And we call it a 3 stages of a franchisee or a partner onboarding, which is the dependent, the interdependent, and independent. And
Okay.
this life cycle is a very a continuous life cycle. And at this stage, because they all joined in, they're more dependent to you. And they would need a lot of support, a lot of guidance, a lot of regular engagement. Right. And the problem is a lot of people get into the business like this, and this is self-starter. You need to be yourself doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get back to their whatever they were doing and they lost control, and then they start blaming the company and say, look, I became your partner because I was not able to make money. Especially when it's a kind of a direct sales kind of a function. It's not a retail function where you just open up a shop and customer would come to you. So it takes a lot in the dependent stage. At least from an education and activation process viewpoint. And then once they get into the interdependent and then the independent, when they become independent, then they are themselves good enough to handle. But I think the first 2 stages are very critical to achieve that.
Correct. No, that's a nice way to put it. I was just thinking when you were saying that dependent, interdependent, independent. That's exactly what it is. If you are able to identify those stages and do the interaction with them accordingly, then you make it successful.
Absolutely. And I when I do trainings with companies, and I always tell them that put into 3 baskets. And if as a journey we are able to take, say we got 150 now as a dependent, how many we will move them that they now started doing performing and they become a little bit of interdependent with us. They do something, we do something, but there is a correlation. And how many goes into the independent stage, and how this basket is continued to move month on month, and that cycle is very important. And mature companies would have a very strong cycle to really do that, and some would not be able to do that. They would take much longer period than a few others, and some would be very sharp to fly very fast, but they will not be consistent. So all these answers would become a very complex. But you have a lot of good franchise and channel experience, I'm sure under your guidance, things would be able to be much in control then. And a lot of people, I don't know, I mean, they don't understand how to manage channel business. So it's very, sometimes can be very complex in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be patient is what I have realized. I mean, if you are not patient, so in my experience, so I told you about the Tata experience. Tata experience was a very successful channel network. I tried, or I would say half-heartedly in Byju's, we tried doing it. It was a failure. Uh, uh, and in Upgrad, I am restarting it. Let us see where it goes. So far, it has been good, but it's all about having patience is what I realized. You can't expect things to happen like tomorrow. Let's hope things will be fast at least.
Absolutely.
True.
Yeah.
So there's, one question related to that, do you give any geographical rights or, geographical priorities to these partners?
Yeah. So, see, that is where we started with, right? I mean, the initial idea of franchise partner, which was there in Upgrad, was about a retail store where the customer and the parents of the customer can come experience the brand and so on and so forth, right? But with pandemic coming in, all of that flew off. We may bring it back after things are stable, but as of now, it is channel partners we are working with local intelligence and local understanding, right? So we are trying to be geographically you say cognizant on getting the channel partners, because the whole idea itself was to bring a person who is from that locality, who understand that locality. So although today his mobility is constrained, he's talking on call, I can argue that I can give a lead from Madhya Pradesh to a person sitting in Bangalore also. He may convert. But then the whole idea is not, I mean, like the purpose is not met there, right? The idea was that he's a person from locality. He knows that when he talks to the sales, the customer, he knows that, okay, this is not a company like this. I know that you would have heard about this college which was there in the locality that did not work out well. Their placement is like that, but this company is getting you this. So that local touch will only come in if I have local partners, right? So we have tried to bring in that whole geographical aspect in it, and they have also been responding well. But as of now, we are not doing any exclusivity. I don't believe in exclusivity at this stage, because what will happen then is that exclusivity will kill the competition and kill that aggression and ambition to go. So at this stage, we are not trying to do it. We are trying to see if we have partners who will emerge out and become like someone who can handle that territory. Then we can look at exclusivity and all. As of now, we are not doing
it. Okay.
And also, I also feel that while major distribution come from these micro partners,
yep,
but there can be an opportunity for you to look at later bigger partners who have much more capability of penetration and involvement and putting some strong direct sales teams and so on and so forth, because then they would be able to do and build more capabilities in a particular region, which is say, and underpenetrated regions like say Northeast. Northeast is a very big region, but might need somebody who goes deeper into that and penetrates the market.
Got it. Right. So there's like the super distributors.
Yeah, somebody who's able to really develop. We call the area developers, the people who would actually develop the area, and so that can be a good opportunity to look at.
Understand. Perfect. Sure, sir. Yep.
Ashita, we are running on the time, so you have some final questions from your.
So I understand that you have a budding entrepreneur at home. So do you help your wife? I understand that she started the mom store. Do you help her in any way, or she's completely on her own?
She is completely on her own. So she is in that independent stage, which Gaurav was talking about. She runs it herself. And she has been, so it's currently doing quite well. I think the pandemic also worked out very well. The whole idea of going out when you're pregnant is not even something people are thinking about now. They all want to do it online. So business side, the growth is great. What she is also working now is developing a supplier network, because we are very clear that finally it will become a successful business if we have people in India manufacturing these products. So Frank, I mean, like the tough part about our nation is that we want to do a lot of things, but actually on the field, hota nahi hai. There are hardly any of these SMEs who are able to do these things. There is so much of issue with credit. So we have been trying to work in that direction, creating a supplier network who can do it. And it's not, see, it's, I mean, it's not really a patriotic decision or anything like that. It's purely a business decision. Because if you import today and if you make in India, right, the difference in pricing is almost 1/5. So it makes a lot of sense to invest and make these supplier networks in that. So that is the focus now. Logistics and supply network and other things. So that is also one place where if there are people who are interested, please reach out. That is some place we can work together on.
True. So having said that, she's busy, in her own venture, taking care of 1 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Who's managing cooking the South Indian food?
Yeah, so I think that gets managed somehow or the other. Somehow or the other. The best part about South Indian cooking is that you can do it real quick.
Right. True. So what is it that you're reading nowadays? I understand that you're an avid reader. So something interesting?
So the problem with work from home is that you literally work all the time. You don't get time to switch off at all. So that's been so I used to travel a lot. I mean, a lot in the sense I used to be on the road for 4 days a week. That's used to be my travel schedule, literally. So that's how I used to do my reading, because you don't have anything else when you are traveling, right? You keep reading. So that's how I used to cover it. Now, ever since the pandemic, I've been locked out of reading. I've been reading very, very, very less now. So the recent book I am doing is a book on South India. It's called as it's the history of the Coromandel coast, which is Western Tamil Nadu and Kerala, how the origins happened. So I'm very interested in these kind of things. So that's what I keep reading.
Phenomenal. And I'll take one question, which is more about having a investor and a co-founder like Ronnie being on the business. While we all know Ronnie very well, so he's somebody who speaks his mind, and also is very active kind of an investor. So he's not like a passive investor. So how does this marry? With you in our leadership now, and you have so to say a co-founder and investor who also has his own very strong opinion. How does it marry?
Interesting question. So first of all, Ronnie is a co-founder. We are not calling him an investor. He's very involved in the business. So what he has done is that so the good part about Ronnie is that he comes with so much of experience and so much of this astute intelligence about things that he will see something 3 days before you would start thinking about it. Okay, so what he does is that he ensures that he overall sees the entire thing, sees the direction, and gives us those hints to push us in the right direction. So that's how we are all playing our part. Yes, and you're absolutely right. Ronnie is very upfront. He will tell you what is there in the mind, but he's also a very reasonable person. If you are talking to him in data, your point of view, and then we sometimes, most of the times he is right, or sometimes we are right. Finally, it's all data driven. It's if you are able to prove your point with data, he accepts it. And sometimes, a lot of times, his point of view is right, where we go back and make those fixes. So it's always better to have a person like that in-house who will help us not to do those bigger mistakes, right? So we have been able to so far, touch wood, it's been great. Let's see how this entire team will scale up the business going forward.
And absolutely, you're the right place, right time. And under your leadership, I think the Upgrad would find as a next level of growth. So our congratulations to you, what you've already accomplished. You're very seasoned professional, and now leadership with you in a right kind of company. So I think the company would see a major growth coming through.